Hi, we are going to see the Java demo. First thing, what is the necessity of learning any language? Like Java is there, .NET is there, PHP is there, Android is there. All these languages are developing a software. Software consists of different types, like system software is there and application software is there. System software means operating system, which consists of the Windows, Linux, and the Mac OS. Application software means the MS Office, games, VLC, Notepad, calculator. All this comes under application software. To develop any software, we learn these languages. Here, Java language follows a concept known as OOPS, Object Oriented Programming Structure. If you want to write a program in Java, you should know what is class, what is object. Two basic principles of OOPS. First thing, object means a real world entity which exists physically and it has some properties and it can perform some action. So what is object? Which exists, which has some properties and which can perform some action. So what is not an object? Which doesn't exist physically. The thoughts, the energy, the force, which doesn't exist. We call it as class. So, two things are there. One which exists is an object, one which doesn't exist is a class. Suppose I have a mango, it's an object because it has some properties like green or yellow color. We have apple, it is also an object. Consider fruit, you haven't seen a fruit. You have seen a mango which is a fruit, you have seen an apple which is a fruit. Means fruit is a category. It is known as class. A class which consists of objects. That's the first definition of class. Collection of objects. As we know, object has some properties and it performs an action. So collection of properties and action is also known as class. For example, if I have a flower which doesn't exist as rose exists, rose is a object and flower is a class. Similarly, animal is a class. Tiger is an object. So if we consider a person, we are all persons. So we can say person is a class. And the person with the name Rahul is an object. And person or Rahul will have some properties to identify them. And Rahul or person have some actions. So what are the properties? Age, height, weight, name are the properties. What are the actions? Talk, read, walk are the actions. So class is a collection of variables as well as functions also we can say. Like int age is a variable, float height is a variable, and void eat is an action. And the same goes with the void read. So class is a collection of variables and functions. And in Java, we call the function as methods. So collection of variables and methods. Class doesn't exist means there is no memory allocated for the class. So here age doesn't have any bytes of memory, height doesn't occupy any space, eat, read. Without the space, I cannot store a value age equals to 22. In order to store that value, we need to have some space for the age. Consider I have a 1 GB movie in a pen drive and I want to store on the hard disk. So I need at least 1 GB space on the hard disk in order to store the movie. The same way, if you want to store a value inside a variable, that variable should occupy some space. Then only the value can be stored. As that person class doesn't exist, it doesn't occupy any space, the programmer has to create the memory by creating an object. So here Rahul is a memory block, we assume. And the memory in the sense, it has some bytes occupied in the RAM. Now we can access that age only through the Rahul. So Rahul dot age is accessible and we can store that age 22. So what happens inside Rahul memory? There is a 4-byte memory for that age, and in that location 22 value is getting stored. The same scenario, if you want to create another memory, we can create Shiva. So here Shiva is a memory block, and if you want to store the age, again you have to access using the object itself. So if I want to store age equals to 32, it's not possible because we need to specify the object. So age equals to 32. So what's the purpose of doing all these things? What's the advantage? Here, age is declared only once and we are able to access that age multiple number of times. That one time and here second time. So here the class variables or methods are declared only once and we are able to access a multiple number of times based on the number of objects. If I have 10 objects, I can access the variables and methods 10 times. If I have n objects, I can access them n number of times. So this is a basic example of class and object. If this example is clear, you can write a program in Java. Now, how this Java is useful? If you see a login process, I'm just showing you in this example. Like if I use a Facebook login or a Gmail login, how the internal process goes on. Like I have a username and password. When entered, it should meet the particular database. So at the time of registration, we give the username and password and the email, which are getting stored in the database. Whereas here we are having that front-end technology like two text box and a button comes under the front-end technology. So what are the front-end technologies we have? We have the HTML to develop a web page. And to assign the styles, we use this cascading style sheet. To apply the validations, like in the username and password, if I'm not entering any value and I'm trying to directly click on login, it will give error saying please enter username and password. That we can achieve using the JavaScript, the client side validation. And we have this database which stores the values at the time of registration. We have different database technologies like Oracle, MySQL, MongoDB, or SQL Server. And here, the whatever the values you are giving in the username and password, like suppose I'm giving this XYZ and ABC, these values are retrieved by the web server. So this module is a web server. And what web server can do? It can handle only static request. Static request in the sense, the page which does not change with every request. Like the home page, or the contact us page of any website doesn't change with every request. Those requests we can say it as a static request. So web server can handle only the static request. It cannot handle the dynamic request. So what is dynamic request means? The hall ticket number you enter generates a different result for all the hall tickets. That is a dynamic request. And the username password you enter for the Facebook generates a different profile page for every user details. Those are dynamic requests. And here, server-side technologies can handle the dynamic request. So what are the different server-side technologies we have? Are nothing but servlet we can use and JSP. So the extension of these are nothing but the Spring framework and Hibernate framework. So what they do, they interact with the database and check whether the username and password exist or not, and it is returned to the particular server-side technologies. And whatever the web page we have generated, it will point to that web page or transfer that web page to the web server, and the web server is giving that page to the particular user. So this is an internal process for any application or any website. So we need to learn front-end technologies. We need to learn the Java technologies, servlets and JSP and the Spring and the Hibernate framework, along with the database Oracle or MySQL. So once we learn all these things, we are able to develop a website, web application. So if you see the Java course content, we have this core Java, starting with this core Java, and the OOPS concept will be taught, that how to create an object, arrays in Java, inheritance, constructor, polymorphism, abstract class, interface. All these concepts will be covered in your course. So multi-threading is there, advanced Java, JDBC, servlets, JSP, Hibernate will be covered, and after that Spring will be there. So Spring will have different modules like the Spring Core, Spring JDBC DAO module, Spring ORM, Spring AOP, and Spring MVC, which can be used to develop that login or the registration card operations. So here, the last thing will be the RESTful web services, and we'll see a SQL database, the basic commands GDL, DML, and DCL. Along with that, we'll see the front-end technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so that's it for today.